We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
That was President Donald Trump's original statement on Charlottesville on Saturday. Joining us now, the host of AM Joy on MSNBC, Joy Reid, and staff writer at Politico magazine, Ben Schrenkinger. His latest piece says white nationalists are trying on an unfamiliar role: police victims. Good morning to you both. Joy, let's just get caught up with you on the events of the last several days. Saturday is Saturday. We just saw it on violence on many sides. You talked about hate on many sides, although there was only one death in Charlottesville, and it came from one side. And then it took him until yesterday to say in clear terms, out of his own mouth, that he disavowed and everything else he should have said earlier on. Do you believe the new comment was sincere, or do you believe he was forced into the position of making that comment?
Well, I think that Donald Trump's tweet saying, well, the media is still not satisfied, kind of revealed the fact that it was forced on him, that he sort of revealed, he's very revelatory about his emotions on Twitter. And I think he made it pretty clear that he was pushed to do it and that he did it in order to get better media coverage, and he's angry that it didn't work. And it's interesting because, it started on Saturday as far as the major breaking news, even including on our show when, we had a guest pulled off of our set live. But the actual incident started the night before. And so I think, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it from the perspective of a president who got 80% of the evangelical Christian vote. And the night before, there were pastors, clergy, including my guest the next day, holed up inside of a church on the UVA campus, being surrounded by people marching with torches. I mean, it was sort of a lame version of a Klan-esque sort of display because they were tiki torches. I guess that's all they could get at Home Depot that time of night. But I mean, if you were inside that church, and we spoke to people, including pastors who were in that church, you're talking about Christian pastors and lay people who were inside a church praying, while outside they could hear the rumbling and roar of blood and soil, which is, of course, the Nazi theme of the agriculture department of Nazi Germany. And the pastor that we spoke with, Reverend Blackman, said that when she was a kid growing up in the South, she remembers Klan rallies, and it sounded like a Klan rally. So think about the terror that they inflicted on Christian pastors the night before. And so for a president who claims the support of the evangelical Christian world not to come out and immediately condemn the terrorizing of ministers, and then the next day that same group of pastors were set upon by white nationalists with brass knuckles and baseball bats. So this wasn't just a march that went awry. This was incredible violence and terrorism perpetrated against lay people, Christians, peaceful marchers who were just there to organize against hate. So this was a layup for any president. This was the easiest, lowest bar a president would have to reach to condemn that. The fact that he had to be forced to do it is a scandal on the presidency. It's a shame. It takes away the moral authority of the office.
Ben, you're writing this morning for Politico about the reaction in the days since Saturday in Charlottesville of white nationalists, of the groups that have bubbled up and been given some cover to behave in the way they behaved over the last few days. How are they feeling right now as they've watched how the president has conducted himself, and why were his words or his lack of words important to them?
Richard Spencer gave a press conference yesterday in Alexandria. He said that he doesn't think the president really meant what he said, that he feels the president only made his follow-up statement yesterday because he was forced to. And Spencer pointed out that the president did not name white nationalists in the group that he condemned. Spencer considers himself to be a white nationalist and feels that the president still hasn't condemned him, and that the president hasn't actually told Spencer, at least, or people who identify with the alt-right, to do anything differently from what they have been doing.
Ben, I'm watching that video of Richard Spencer. It's been reported that he couldn't get a hotel that would support this kind of press conference. It would open up space to him, so he ended up in some apartment, I think, in Northern Virginia with like a stack of CDs behind him and a flat screen. And I just wonder, yet reporters obviously showed up to listen to what he had to say. And so, Joy, I would ask you this as well, the role that the media has in either covering or not covering, these groups, giving them oxygen. Obviously, this is when somebody is killed, when a car plows through a crowd of people and somebody dies, that is news and deserves to be covered. At the same time, I'd love your thoughts on the responsibility that we have, I think.
Yeah, I think of all the sort of profiles that have been done of Richard Spencer, and I'm wondering, why are we doing that? You know, why is the media doing full-on profiles of these white nationalist leaders as if they are normal political figures? He's become accustomed to that. I recently read a piece that talked about the haircut, the fasci that they're all wearing. You know, pieces are being written about their fashion sense, about what they wear. Who cares? I mean, these are people who should be on the fringes. You know, I was a kid when, you know, I'm old enough to remember when David Duke first took off the Klan robes and said, we're now going to dress up in suits. And he sort of innovated that. And Spencer is sort of the next generation of that. I think we give them too much attention. You know, I actually have to give it up to GoDaddy, which is, you know, a conservative, Trump-supporting founder of that company, who said, you know, you can't even put your website on here, Stormfront. You know, it's a shame that we have to know the names of all of these white supremacist groups and organizations. I guess we should be knowledgeable about it. But I think one fewer profile would be nice.
You know, Ben, the focus of your piece really is about the relationship between these white nationalist groups and police. Traditionally, the white nationalist groups have been supporters, not that the police sought their support, but they have supported them. And Jason Kessler, who organized the Charlottesville rally, said, quote, "This has changed everything. I thought the police would uphold constitutional law no matter what." So now they're going after the police in America as well?
That's right, and they seem to be processing a form of shock that they would ever feel that the police were not on their side. Both Kessler and Richard Spencer expressed that sentiment. They are planning to file lawsuits, they say, against Charlottesville for the way it policed the event, against the state of Virginia for the way that
What's their specific complaint about that, Ben?
They have a few. Kessler claims that there was a plan that was made ahead of time with the city of Charlottesville, and that the city of Charlottesville departed from that plan. I spoke to a spokeswoman for the Charlottesville PD. She says that it's the white nationalists who didn't follow the plan that had been agreed to ahead of time. Kessler says that state police were not proactive on Sunday when he was attacked in that video that you're showing now in protecting him. So there is this
we're watching them be pretty active right here to peel someone off of him, but continue.
That's right. So they say they're speaking to lawyers and looking for a lawyer in the state of Virginia who will take their cause to court and say that they were the victim of a police conspiracy to deny them their civil rights.
So the argument, Ben, is, I don't want to belabor this too much, but is that if not for the police performance on Saturday in Charlottesville, Heather Heyer might not be dead, that this would have been a peaceful rally for them?
That is the argument that they're making. They say that the police have, quote, blood on their hands.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, I asked Spencer yesterday at this press conference whether, having said that he felt for the first time in his life that the police weren't on his side, whether that gave him more sympathy for groups like Black Lives Matter and for minority groups who say they've been treated unfairly by the police, that traditionally the alt-right has demonized and belittled. He sort of dodged the question. I never really got a total answer from him on that.
All right, Ben Schrenker, wild piece. Thank you very much. We'll be checking out your reporting in Politico magazine.
You know, Joy, one of the more interesting and depressing aspects of everything that's occurred since Saturday and before, actually, is the combination of human nature and instinct. So on Saturday, you have Nazis in the streets in Charlottesville. You have violence. You have a death that occurs of an innocent American. And then you have the President of the United States, and his instinct is not to really go there, not to mention it.
Yeah. It is telling about Donald Trump. I mean, I have to say that my only real surprise is that people are surprised. I mean, Donald Trump has been the same person since I moved back to New York in the late 1980s as a teenager. I mean, he's the guy who wanted the Central Park Five, who were teenagers like me at the time, dead, and took out a full-page ad to make it clear he wanted them dead. He's the guy who was sued by the Nixon administration, for God's sakes, for not allowing people like me to move into his buildings. You know, I mean, I was one of the few people in my friend group who wouldn't watch The Apprentice because I saw him as a bigot, you know, years ago. So he was a birther. So the fact that, you know, he cultivated the alt-right, he brought them into the White House. Steve Bannon proclaimed on the record to a reporter that Breitbart is the home for the alt-right, that he wanted it to be that. So, you know, the only thing that surprises me is that people are surprised. Donald Trump's instinct has always been to give, if not a consent and support to the alt-right, to at least give it a pass. And for him to come out and immediately try to equate the two, the counter-protesters and the Nazis, that they were both just two sides of a coin, it tells you who Donald Trump is. But you know what? This is who Donald Trump has been his whole public life. He hasn't changed. So I think we should stop expecting Donald Trump to grow into the office. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's 71 years old. He is not going to change. This is who he is.
Now,
this is who people elected.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.